Welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Hopkins, life coach, recovering perfectionist, crazy animal lover, and your go-to friend for all things wellness. If you're the type of woman who constantly feels burned out, overwhelmed, and like you have zero time for yourself, then this is the show for you. I'll show you that it is completely possible to live a life you look forward to every single day by learning simple, actionable steps to start putting yourself first. Burnout and overwhelm are not welcome here, but a little bit of crazy sure is. So if you're ready for your wake-up call with a girl who's not afraid to drop an F-bomb every now and then, let's dive in. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Wake Up Call podcast. This is your host, Alicia Hopkins, and I'm so thrilled that you are joining me for another episode. And today's episode is, I don't want to say it's a weird one. It's just one that I've noticed in myself. I've really been moving through some things. And as I've been processing and thinking about it, sitting on it, I felt like it was something that might be valuable and something that you may identify. And I feel like when these things come up, in the past, what I've found is when I share them, inevitably, these tend to be the episodes that really resonate with people. So I felt like, why am I sitting on this? And I need to put this out in the world. So what I'm talking about is I have been in a period, right? We'll just call it what it is. It's a rut, right? And the past 2 weeks have been kind of weird, kind of funky. Last week in particular was kind of weird and strange. I was sick the first half of the week. Then I went through literally like 5 nights in a row where I was waking up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and not going back to sleep. My family had just left town the week prior, so I was feeling sad. You know, they had been in town and them leaving was this big void. I was stressed out about some things at work. And I was questioning a lot about what I'm doing right here, right? With building my podcast, building my coaching practice. Why am I even doing this, right? All the thoughts. And I was just in this period where it was a funk, it was a rut, it was marked with a lot of questioning, a ton of doubts, and I had a full-on freaking meltdown last Friday where, right, tears, just saying all these thoughts that were in my head of like, what the fuck am I even doing, right? Like, I reached this point where I just felt like no more. I had nothing left to give in any freaking area of my life. Like everything was frazzled. I felt like I was pushing in all areas of my life and I hit that wall where I was like, I can't fucking do it anymore. Like I am spent. And right, things don't happen by accident. I had a coaching session with my coach, who we had to reschedule, and the purpose of my coaching with her is all about the business, right? And building the business. And we were talking and she's like, Alicia, I just don't think focusing on your business right now is where you need to be. I think you need to be focusing on yourself. And I thought, how ironic is this? I have built my coaching, my podcast, all about helping others prevent themselves from getting to this place. And I was right smack dab in the middle of it. I share that to say, right, and I'm being vulnerable, is just because you know all the things doesn't mean you're not susceptible for it happening in your own life. And for me, I had just been coming off the heels of nonstop, go, go, go. And my coach was absolutely right. Like I needed a minute for myself. So what that looked like was I pulled back from some things and I just took some time to literally focus on myself, like the thing that I preach to everybody else out there in the world, right? Sometimes what we are preaching is what we need the most. And I just went into a period of reflection. And as I was journaling one day, just feeling not myself, like, that feeling, it's just like you have an awareness that something's not right. You don't feel yourself, but yet you feel like you don't have the zest or the oomph to like pick yourself up out of it either, right? So like I was in the doldrums. And last week I was journaling and I was just going through like all these thoughts, right? And I have such clarity, right? Like I know where I am right now and I see what I want, right? My goals, my vision, the things that I want in my life in all areas, personal, professional, like all of it. So it's like I feel like I'm standing on one edge of this, the ground. And then on the other side, I see everything that I want. And I'm feeling like I can't fucking have it. And it's all of a sudden this visualization came through to me in these words. What came to me was it's the gap of disbelief. And it makes me think of like the Grand Canyon, like standing on one side and then seeing the other, but there's this space in between, right? And for where I have been, that gap in between, it's all the things I'm not believing in myself for, right? It's all the doubts, the questions, it's everything that's preventing me from reaching that other side. And if I'm really honest, that gap represents where typically I've made a U-turn, right? And I've gone back to what's familiar. Do you know that experience? Like, have you ever had that where, you're pressing forward and working towards the goals that you see for yourself? And then it's like you reach this spot, right? It's like the edge of your comfort zone. And it ends up being the place where you typically turn around and go back to what you know. Like, right, you start accepting good enough and just saying, maybe I don't need this right now. But where I'm at right now, like a U-turn's not a choice, right? I am going to get to that other side, but it's like I had to kind of acknowledge it for what it was. So then I thought, all right, I've got this gap, like, right, of where I am, where I see I'm going, and what do you do in between? And it came to me that I thought, I need to cross the gap, right? And how do you do that? And that's what I want to share with you because I'm hoping that my story resonates with you if there are things, right? Whatever the goals, the dreams are that you want in your life, and you reach the point where the gap feels greater than what you think you can handle, I want to offer the question to you of, what if this is the place where you're supposed to keep going forward? And not only that, but I wanted to share the ways that I know I have been putting my efforts, my focus in my own life to bridge that gap, right? So I can cross the disbelief and get to where I know I want to go. Because all of that resistance in between, if we don't learn how to relate to it and how to navigate it, it's always going to be the place where you U-turn, right? It's always going to be where the excuses become greater than your vision and you turn around, right? And we don't do that here, right? So the things that came to mind and like where I have been just very much so pouring into myself, the first and foremost thing is I am remaining very clear on what I want. And while those things, like the steps, the how, if you will, on getting there, that has yet to be revealed, but it doesn't mean I abandon my vision. If anything, it's the time to really anchor into it even more. Like, why do you want it? What feelings will it bring about in you? Like, what does it give you in getting that goal that you're working toward? So step number one is I'm really tethering into my vision even more because it's not the time that I'm going to give up on it. The next thing I've really been doing is focusing on my mind and body. One, just nurturing it, right? Like I'm giving myself lots of rest. I'm giving myself lots of grace right now. But I'm also feeding it evidence, like my mind specifically, of why the belief that I don't have, like how can I strengthen that belief, right? And what I mean by that is I'm choosing to identify the evidence of the progress I've made, right? Not perfection, I'm not there yet. But what progress have I made? Because I think what ends up happening a lot of times is when we meet the resistance and the doubts all creep in, we start focusing on all that we have yet to do, to accomplish, to get there. And we completely throw out the window everything that you've done, like the progress you've made, right? If you could look back to 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever the cadence, right? If you look back, I guarantee you these goals that you're working on in your life, you've made a lot of progress, but you just haven't stopped to notice it. We need to start noticing it. When you give your brain the evidence that you are making progress, a funny thing starts to happen. Your thoughts start shifting a little bit. Your brain starts looking for more ways that it can feed you the evidence that you're doing the thing, right? So in this time, I think it's really important in crossing this gap of disbelief that you keep your mind and your body right. Self-care, a must. Get the rest, take care of yourself. I know for me, it's been even like just taking a step back. Like I haven't been on social, I'm not posting. Like I'm really just taking the time to kind of retreat to feel good. Like retreat in the sense of coming into myself, not like retreat, run away. So that's what I feel like I'm doing with my body and then my mind. It's just really reminding myself that there's been a lot of progress that's happened here, right? And not to dismiss it. So another thing that I think is really important when you're looking to cross the gap of disbelief is consistency. And this one can be painful. Like I feel it in my soul sometimes is that we are so wired to think if it doesn't happen fast, if it doesn't happen now, I must be doing something wrong. Or maybe it's not really meant for me. We think that if it doesn't happen as a result of these actions that we hurry up and do real quick, like it's that it's supposed to happen right away. And I'm sure our society has much to do with that of feeding us this, sense of urgency now, bigger, faster, quicker. And what I'm learning is the slow and steady is actually more reliable than the fast and quick give it to me now. And I think why there's also another argument for consistency is I think when we are working towards these things that we want in our life, it's like this pendulum that either you feel like you're killing it or you're a failure. And when you sort of swing back and forth from these dynamics, it's like when you are in the lull and where you're having a lot of doubt, you think the answer is, I need to hurry up and just do some big grand action, right? And then you overcompensate. It's like you feel bad that you like have been sitting on the sidelines, so then you overcompensate. All you're doing is creating a freaking roller coaster of your energy, your sanity, all of it. So I believe it's the small, consistent, regular, everyday things you're doing that build the belief that get you closer to what you're working toward, right? And that's been hard for me. Like, I definitely have a lot of triggers and stories around urgency, happen fast. And honestly, I think a lot of that's been getting in the way of me like reaching some of these things I want because it's like if it doesn't happen right away, you give up and think it's wrong. And I actually don't think it's the time to question it in that manner, right? You can ask some productive questions, but to question that you're doing it right or that it's meant for you, I don't think that's really what's going on. So I think if you're feeling like the gap from where you are now to where you're going is far too great, I offer back to you of what consistent things can you be doing in your thoughts, your actions, your intentions to just move that needle a little bit further ahead today than you were yesterday. Just progress, right? Progress, not perfection. So something else that's really, I think, been an opportunity is looking at those thoughts that come up when you are in those times of self-doubt, right? Like, so for me, I'm trying to really capture the thoughts that are coming up, right? I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. What if you're not supposed to be doing this anyways? Like, right? Those thoughts that come up. And instead of believing them and hooking into them, I'm choosing to use it as these are the things that are coming up that I need to clean up in my thoughts about myself, thoughts about what I'm working toward, right? So like if you are having these thoughts come up, this negative self-talk, what if instead of identifying with it, you saw it, you listened to those thoughts, and then that was the work you started to do in this time period where you're feeling like in the funk, right? Of maybe you are in this place because you have some mental garbage that needs cleaned up. And can you choose to do the work around it, right? Can you journal? Can you talk to a good friend? Reach out to support through a therapist or a coach, right? Like, what if you actually dealt with those negative thoughts so you could move through them? That's just something else that's come up for me of like listening to the stories and the thoughts that come up and not necessarily actioning them in the way that you identify, but it's just taking action in the sense of how can I work through this and really sift through the fact and the fiction of what these thoughts are trying to tell me. The last thing I'd like to leave you with is this time that you're feeling like you're in the gap of disbelief, right? You're in the rut, you're in this in between phase. What if you could also use this time to breathe a little, have a little fun, pour into the parts of you that you haven't, right? So, to use my example, I have been in a period where I feel like I'm really valuing productivity and I'm feeling like I'm supposed to be doing all these things, right? And where that action and energy is being poured into is, right, my coaching, the podcast, like all of this other stuff that I'm building in my life. I think about it all the time and it's a slippery slope, right? I love it. Like it excites me so much. And you might remember a previous episode too of that you can get burned out doing the things that you love. Like I know I've reached that point and it's where I justify putting all the energy into it because I love it and I'm excited by it. But what's at cost is that I also haven't given myself just some space to chill out, right? Like the things that have been missing in my life have been more along the lines of like, what am I doing for play? What am I doing for fun? Like, what are the things that I can do in my life that have absolutely no other outcome or result tied to them other than it's just something I want to do, right? I want to go on a walk. I want to go rent a kayak for the weekend and go out on the water. Like these things that I love them, they bring me joy, but those have been put on the back burner because all of my time and energy has been poured into this thing, my goal, right? The thing I'm building. And if there's anything I'm learning, your brain, your mind, your being needs some freaking space sometimes to just be, right? To slow down, to not be working towards something, and having a little bit of an element that you just get to be a person, right? Like you just get to be someone who does things that bring them joy just because. So if you find yourself that you're feeling really burned out, spread thin, maybe you need some more just because things, right? That you're doing something just because you want to, not because you feel like you have to, that there's some other result tied to it, right? So these things, I believe, when you address them, start putting your focus on them, kind of detach from like the how a little bit and just spend some time really, reminding yourself that what I want, these goals are still important to me. And just because it feels hard right now doesn't mean they're wrong. It's a great opportunity to really pour into your well-being, your mind, your body, all of that. It's a great time to remember that consistency wins the race, not these just fast spurts of energy and then you're depleted, right? And also just making time for joy, for fun, to just chill out. It was offered to me recently that what if instead of all of this self-doubt that I've been sitting in, what if instead of it being this time where I'm questioning what I'm doing, what if this was really exactly where I needed to be to look inward, give myself the tune-up I need, and develop like the recipe of what you do when you meet the resistance, right? Because I believe probably the goals you're working towards in your life, you have them for a reason. And it's not time to give up on them. Instead, it's time to like fortify yourself, remind yourself of where you're going and that there's a reason it's been placed on your heart, your mind, your soul, however you want to think about it. And in order to cross this gap, it's really time to just like tune into yourself, do all the things, the self-care, the cleaning up the thoughts, all of that. So I hope that, right, first of all, I hope you're still here listening. I hope this served you. I hope that one or many of these things have given you maybe a little bit of like your mental tune-up that you needed to know that this is the time to just keep moving forward, right? Like to really take care of yourself, not abandon the goal, to not make the U-turn, and believe that this is exactly where you're meant to be and that, right, what you're learning in this moment is going to serve you moving forward in this goal that you're working toward. So, guys, thank you as always for tuning in. I love connecting with you on the podcast. It truly brings me such joy. If you haven't yet rated and reviewed the podcast, I would love for you to take just 1 second, well, okay, more than a second, right? Just a quick minute to do so. It's the best way for people to know, what they're going to find from this show, helps people discover the show, helps me know what's resonating with you. So guys, thank you as always. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to connect with you on the next episode. Bye guys. Thank you so much for listening to the Wake Up Call podcast. If you liked what you heard today, I would love for you to subscribe and leave a review. It takes just a few minutes and does wonders for helping other people find the podcast. If you want to connect outside of the podcast, you can do so by following @Alicia D. Hopkins on Instagram. And if you really liked the episode you just listened to, do me a favor. Would you screenshot the episode and tag me? I would love to see what's resonating with you. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope today's episode helped you to see that you can wake up to the change that's possible in your life.